Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be discussing the correlation between HEX and other top performing coins in the market as measured from the beginning of this bull market. So if you like this kind of quantitative analysis on the markets, this calculated approach, leave a thumbs up, be subscribed by the end of the video, and let's go ahead and dive into this analysis. So in a previous video, we looked at normalized ROI from the beginning of this bull market, so March 13th of 2020, and we found that for the most part HEX outperformed the entire market and continues to. And some people in the comments brought up the fact that you are gaining interest on HEX, so some people have anywhere from 40% to 100%, so anywhere from 1.4x to 2x to their stack, meaning that we're actually on par with Doge. So HEX and Doge, I guess you could say, are the leaders of the market. It sounds crazy to say, I know. For now, we'll see what the future brings. But wrapping back around to the topic at hand, when we do this, you kind of ask yourself, well, everything's moving up, right? And I asked myself, what is the actual correlation between HEX and the markets? Because let's be real, with the recent dip that we've seen across crypto, a lot of people are starting to call for a bear market. And whether that's the case or not, I think it's smart to start gaining some insight on how correlated is HEX with the actual rest of the crypto markets to start preparing for a bear market, because a crypto bear market will come at some point. Again, we don't know how HEX performs through the beginning, depths, and end of a bear market, but nonetheless, we want to be prepared for the rest of crypto. I think it's a good idea given that we are in the crypto space, right? And so what I went ahead and did is something super simple with these data sets starting from March 13th, 2020 up to today. I simply use this RSQ function in Google Sheets, which gives you your R squared value. Now, for those of you who are familiar with statistics, you know what an R squared value is. For those of you who aren't, it's simply a measure of how correlated is one data set with another data set. So simply speaking, how correlated is, for example, HEX, this pink curve, with Bitcoin, this orange curve. Now, if they were the exact same slopes on any given day, like if they were rising with each other, dipping with each other perfectly, even if with some price offset, right? If they're moving in tandem, the correlation coefficient would be 1, so 100%. And it would essentially mean they're the same chart at the end of the day. And a correlation coefficient of 0 would essentially mean completely decorrelated. They're doing the opposite of each other for the most part, okay? And so what we found is that the highest correlation coefficient, interestingly enough, is with Bitcoin. I was thinking for some reason it would be with Ethereum, given Ethereum was the highest liquidity pair for HEX for the longest time. But to my surprise, we find that the R squared value of HEX with Bitcoin, again, we're just using the data set starting from March 13th, 2020 up to today. It might be actually a good idea to get more historical data. Might actually do that in this video. But for the most part, we see that the highest correlation coin that HEX has within, how do I say this? I'm not going to edit this. So HEX is mostly correlated with Bitcoin out of these top performing coins, right? With a 73%. So not 100%. You rarely ever get a 100% correlation coefficient between any two data sets, unless they're the literal same data set. But for now, we're going to look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, given that both of their correlation coefficients are above 70%. So a C minus, C, not bad, right? You look at Link, ADA, and Doge, and they're just not as correlated, okay? So we're going to be sticking to the HEX Bitcoin and HEX ETH valuations, right? So when you look at something like this, right, the HEX Ethereum valuation, what are you actually looking at? You're looking at the HEX USD price divided by the ETH USD price, and USD cancels each other out, and you get this HEX ETH ratio. And for the most part, we're going to be talking in GWei, which is a billionth of an ETH, given the fact that we have, billions, hundreds of billions of HEX in circulation, whereas we only have tens of millions of ETH in circulation. How many ETH do we actually have in circulation? 115 million. Okay, so we're about, what, 4,000x unit scale difference, however you want to think about that. So we're going to be talking in Satoshis and GWei, all right? So let's close this. And again, when you're looking at this HEX ETH valuation, what you're really looking at is something like this, right? Dividing the HEX USD price by the Ethereum USD price. Now, here on the left axis, we have the price of HEX. Here on the right axis, we have the price of Ethereum. And you can see why we got a correlation coefficient about 71% for HEX and Ethereum, because they're pretty much moving up in tandem for the most part. When Hex move, or when Ethereum moves up, Hex moves up, and vice versa. Now, obviously, that's not the case all the time, but with the recent claims a lot of people have made that Hex is going to outperform in a bear market and it's not correlated to the rest of crypto. Sure, we have some days where we have, huge decorrelations. And no two assets are ever going to be perfectly correlated all the time, but I do find it interesting that I'm actually getting opposing results from the data suggesting that Hex is highly correlated with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And again, liquidity shifts, and I know recently, like in the past few months or so, a lot of Hex's liquidity has shifted from Ethereum into USDC. So, that kind of throws a wrench in things, because that happened, deep into this data. If you think about like a few months ago, when did the majority of the liquidity shift? Let's say it was in December. Well, we have a whole year of data of correlation before that liquidity shifted over. So again, these models aren't perfect. No model is, but I do find it interesting that for the most part, regardless of liquidity, kind of considering that's like a constant, or a non-changing, right, a constant, then you look at something like this. And without rambling too much about that, let's continue on with the model. This is normalized ROI from the beginning of Hex's launch. All right, so not from the beginning of the bull market, but from the beginning of Hex's launch, comparing Hex to Ethereum, just to further illustrate that they do move together for the most part, with some exceptions, like obviously some oscillation around it, and not moving perfectly in tandem together, but there is the obvious that they're both moving up and to the right over time. And so you can do something like this, a Hex ETH index, which I believe was on hex.live a while back, kind of shown in a different way, way prettier, obviously, but it pretty much told you how up you were, how much ROI you had in terms of things like ETH and Bitcoin with your Hex. So you can see that in May of last year, you were pretty much up 11x on your ETH. You would have multiplied your ETH by 11 if you had been holding on to Hex, right? And they reached a point by after big payday where it almost reached 1, right? So if you had you would have just 1.15x'd your ETH by that point. But still, we've pretty much been oscillating between, the, what is this, the 2 to 10x for the past year or so. And I know you can't do traditional technical analysis on this, but if you could, this is an extremely bullish chart, right? You have this sort of inverse head and shoulders type formation. That you could consider this level like this 5x level in neckline, if you see what I'm saying. And then recently we kind of broke out of it and are finding support on this 5x your ETH zone. Now with Bitcoin, probably should have done this one first, because we had a 73% correlation coefficient between Hex and Bitcoin. Here it is with two different axes, here it is with two different axes, the price of Hex and the price of Bitcoin. Again, you can see why they're correlated, because they, for the most part, move down together, move up together with some exceptions. Here we have it normalized for ROI purposes, and you can see that from December of 2019 up to now, so if you, let's say, aped into Hex on day one, or, well, December 17th wasn't day one. So let's say you'd aped into Hex on day, 16, 17, then you'd be up 100x on your money. Whereas if you had done the same on Bitcoin, you'd only be up about 8x or so, right? And so the ratio of these two provides some insight, just like we did with Ethereum. And we look at the fact that, hey, if you'd bought on December of 2019, held on until capitulation, you pretty much would have been break even. And then anytime after that, we seem to have oscillated between the 5 and 30x region or so, right? And so I find this interesting. The fact that, you'd be up 10x versus your Bitcoin, you'd be up something like what was it right now? You'd be up 5x versus your Ethereum, and that makes sense because Ethereum generally outperforms Bitcoin by about 2x or so. So you'd be up about half as much on your ETH as you would on your Bitcoin. So that's just the video for you guys. It's the correlation of HEX with different top performers, different market players in this crypto space. I find it very interesting. In the future, I might do a correlation coefficient with more data. So you know what? Why not do it right now? Even though we're at 10 minutes already, let's make this a long one. If you guys are sticking in there, you are warriors. So it's pretty simple, right? Let's zoom out and let's just get a new cell right here and say equals RSQ. That's literally all you have to do. Equals RSQ. It's the R squared coefficient. And then inside of that, you simply highlight your hex price all the way with up until the data set you want, the last element in that data set, comma, and you simply do Bitcoin price. So this is finding the correlation coefficient between the hex price and the Bitcoin price starting on HEX's launch up until today. And let's take a look. About 74% or so. Okay, so even a little more correlated looking back, and it makes sense, right? Liquidity shifting from Bitcoin with the free claims kind of had that bond right there into something more. We have more liquidity in USDC now with HEX, I believe. Interesting. So 74% compared to our 73%. So not much of a difference. Now let's do the same with Ethereum. So with the previous data set, it was about 71, 72% or so. So let's get the correlation coefficient between HEX, comma. So now you guys can learn how to do this on your own if you want to do this, comma Ethereum. Awesome. 68%. Interesting. So a little less correlated if you go all the way back to here. And that kind of makes sense, like, because it includes the post-launch dump of HEX, so it was less correlated, where ETH was steadily just moving up. We had this wild oscillation over here, and if you only start on March 11th, like we'd previously done, then you kind of cancel all that out, so it looks more correlated. So that's interesting. Where are we now in the actual price? Things are kind of in the red today. Let's take a look. 166, not bad. We're still holding support for the most part on our ascending triangle. Textbook, right? Looks very nice. And other than that, I did want to update you guys on the regression rainbow just to show you where we are. So we're pretty much coming back down to test our lower bound of our exponential fit. If we look at it on a logarithmic chart here, our regression rainbow, you can see a little more clearly that we are the exponential fit, the lower band of the exponential fit is at around the 0.016 region, and price is chilling pretty much like we just saw around the 0.017. If we look at V2, more accurate data, 165 or so. So we're pretty much touching the lower bound of our exponential support. Now, will we hold it? Only time will tell. We've never broken it decisively and started printing, a large market structure beneath it. This could be the first time. But historically speaking, for the past, for the past 130 days or so, it's been the best buying opportunity for a short term, right? Like if you had bought down here, a third of a penny, you'd be sitting pretty right now. And even here, if you'd bought at the 0.008 region, price is pretty much 2x since then. And a lot of people on Bitcoin are praying for that $100,000 Bitcoin 2x. Well, bro, we did that in like 3 weeks, right? So with that said, again, leave a thumbs up if you enjoy this kind of quantitative analysis. I know pretty much no one is doing this on YouTube right now in relation to HEX anyways. There are some great channels out there that I've seen pop up doing it on other coins, but they just pretend like HEX doesn't exist. So this is me filling a niche, I guess, that I see that I want to be filled. right? That's one of the core axioms of business is fill something, fill a need in the market that's not being fulfilled right now that you would want to see for yourself. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I love watching crypto analysis videos when they're really smart people, and just not even analysis, just kind of psychology of markets and just chatting about that stuff. So with that said, I'm gonna end the video here. This has literally gone on way longer than I thought, but a lot of you guys are, just a final note here, a lot of you guys are bringing up the fact that I should hop on a live stream, which again, I think it'd be interesting. I don't have much to say other than these videos, right? I mean, I'd love to have a conversation actually, see what you guys think about these in person, so we can kind of bounce ideas. So yeah, let's do something like that. Comment down below who you'd like to see me do a live stream with, out of all of, because I know there are a ton of hex streamers out there right now. So let me know who you'd want me to do a live stream with, and I'll consider it. I'll reach out because I've already had people reaching out to do some live streams, so that might be coming up sooner rather than later, especially with polls coming up in about 10 days. We're going to get some updates hopefully on what's going on. I have my theories. Maybe I should make a whole other video on that or save that for some live stream chats. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I do think it'll be overall good for the ecosystem. So again, with that said, appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.